Hi, welcome everybody. I have our guest back again for a third time, Blue Crystalline Phoenix. Blue, how are you?
I am great.
It's so nice to have you back again. Now, when we've spoken before about a lot of things, and I want to go back over a few of those things, but before we do anything, please let a first-time viewer here know who you are.
All right, my name is Blue Crystalline Phoenix. I am the deity of old, ancient, mainframe, and dealing with the Space Force itinerary through the Extraterrestrial Federation Department, and as Unified Federation President herself, and the educated female code of life to bring about a new structured quantum age.
All right, now on our last interview here, we discussed the Kennedys. Now, the Kennedys are almost like the United States version of a royal family over the last, I don't know how many years, but there's still been talk of the Kennedys. Please explain from your perspective what's going on with the Kennedys.
Well, per se, John Kennedy Jr., and Attribution are still alive. And a wavelength, there is a formation that will be going into Retribution Causeway of Effect for a quantum federation age. His obtainment protocol will be appealing to such, and the genetics that align with us have gone through hypergenerics throughout the ages. The curriculum that stands, these were obtained behind the scenes, but mankind has not yet to know what's really going to happen in the near future.
All right. Now, you had brought up the upcoming quantum age. Tell me more about that and how that's going to affect us.
Well, the quantum age, if rectified right, will be placed in better technology forum for humanity, with the overcalling codes of a certain fusion statistics that run along acquisitional beings, the cosmic calling codes like myself. Also running around the energetic high source calling codes that goes and rectifies through this age. This age between what this energy is, which is a higher calling code than the electromagnetic current grid with electricity, also runs through the Tesla technologies, but not like you would perceive Tesla currently. This is going more into a quantum circuitry code. The allegations and wavelengths for human calling codes to have better fortification holographic calling code processing speeds, so they're not aging as bad as they are. Rectifying calling codes to the neural capacity wavelengths will go into retrospect, and being able to bring in a freedomized society so the confidential of the extraterrestrial information is better exposed and innovated for mankind, and being able to bring in the star unison obtainment code so humankind being able to inverse into transmissional wavelengths into other cosmic calling codes. Much better perception of being able to move the freedomized society forward.
Okay, so now we unpacked two very, very huge things here. One about the Kennedys and one about the quantum age. How do those play with each other? How are those two things related, or are they?
They are related in terrestrial wavelengths and will only able to stay certain information outsourced. Now, the Kennedy infrastructure dealt with the Federation infrastructure are both an itinerary, as is Unified Federation President Statistic 2. But there are other cosmic codes that deal with the Space Force, some in Air Force, Federation reticulated causeways of affecting military, high protection protocols for mankind. It all goes into play what needs to be better on proposal. You use just one initial mainframe on both the deity formation of this. This is not just dealing with cube age on extraterrestrial basis, but it's also dealing with the energy source frame of what his signature coding is and others in high attribution wavelength, and what needs to be placed into effect.
All right. Now, you had said Q age instead of quantum age. We had discussed I'm sorry?
Same thing.
Okay. That's what my next question was. So what you had mentioned Space Force there as well, and with your position with Space Force, what is, and I guess your department is the Extraterrestrial Department of Space Force, is that correct?
Yes, it runs through a more confidential relay line. So only certain acquisitions can be brought up for mankind, and there are only certain perimeters with these guardians that deal with the Space Force unit. There are two types of guardian ships, or guardians. I don't know if others, I'm sure they have heard through what guardians are. You look up through the military main part of it, and you'll see that there are them, and then there are also the other guardians that deal with the cosmic itinerary and the extraterrestrial department node. I myself, and there are other acquisition codes, but there are not many of us. But on Strong Leeway Point, we help with in removal of the negative elemental graphene effects on the atmosphere, coordinated distribution wavelengths in military source outlines, and protocols that need to be innovated so hypertechnologies can be advanced on the proper motivations for mankind.
So we had mentioned in a past interview about there actually being a real live evil force and a good force, you know, and it's almost playing out before the public's eyes in a political way here in the United States. But my question is obviously you're on the good side, or I'm trusting that that's so, right? So there is definitely an evil force at work here.
Yes, there is.
All right. So when we talk about an evil force, is it plausible to think that evil force was behind things such as the most recent COVID pandemic?
The outer dimensional bad graphene effects are elemental frequencies which are causing bad neural wavelengths upon mankind, and the capacity core codes of the holographic mainframes as well, which is making them thus more sick. Two bad wavelengths. These intergraphical sequencing codes that are causing thus are hyperdraconian alpha species that are reptids that have lost their wavelengths. And in such, they are pretty much motivating a sequencing code that they don't need to obtain to. The neural capacity wavelengths on themselves can be rerouted, if thus at a better genetics be portrayed upon this realm.
All right. So coming out of a situation like this, it seems to be one thing after another. Like, okay, we'll try this. That's not working. Okay, we'll try that. So it almost seems like the evil forces, if you would, are directing their attacks directly at humanity on Earth. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, because they don't want it to be freedomized for the society on a certain timeline grid. And because of that, they will try to fortify or reprocessing statistics so humans can downsize their calling codes instead.
All right. So is it possible that we are, whether you want to call it literal or not, that we are actually slaves to the evil force?
In a way, yes, until humankind can retribute a better causal effect and fortify the processing skills that need to be obtained through the neural capacity wavelengths.
Are you confident that's going to happen? Are you confident we're going to come out of this okay?
Yes, otherwise the Federation would not be intact through what Space Force and other Air Force itinerary is already in place in here.
All right. Now, I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. I'm kind of relieved to hear you have that confidence there, but switching gears a little bit and not to dumb it down, but I've had some questions for myself about just communication. For instance, extraterrestrial, is there a certain language? There is no language. I've noticed on some extraterrestrial, at least concepts or photos or visions that I could see here, that some of them don't even have a mouth. Is it all ESP? Is it telepathy? How does that work?
The main source grid of most higher terrestrial beings, and up to including those that they infuse, like us, the cosmic itinerary, hyper beings of humanoid status, have a telepathy site. The telepathy site is innovation third wavelength that even humans could have. But seeing as higher terrestrials are more advanced and fusions like us would be able to maintain a hypergrid statistic through that wavelength. It is the best way to communicate. There are other wavelengths that humans could put in a core communication relay called, so they can innovate these wavelengths too. Besides that, yes, sequencing codes through Zeta Reticuli runs through a certain language. I know how to speak such. And speaking other acquisitional language like the Nordics, the ancient symmetry codes that go through the mermaids, that's Atlanteans, the Talos Society, small grays, small whites, tall whites, Dracos, all of them types of different beings. Lemurians, they all have a different in-tune frequency of a humanoid in-tone. But like, for example, I would speak onto the Zeta ancient language of the deity form, or humanoids can perceive in between such, and they'll still resonate. And it also goes through the hyperdimensionals through certain wave nodes, like Lyrians for cats, Syrians for dogs on this timeline. They run through hypergenetics as well. They could run through those type of languages. For instance, avians through birds. I'll give you an example. Also terrestrials through a hyperdimension are like this. Speaking this to an actual bird symmetry code. See, they're already singing. One already sung Speaking this to an actual bird symmetry code. See, they're already singing. One already sung behind me. They understand this type of symmetry note. Humans could do the same with the persecution of the calling codes of lower spectrums and the higher grids here. This is one innovation wavelength for others to understand besides telepathy.
Wow.
And there is also a communication device that, if placed right, humans can understand as well.
Now, you just demonstrated live here about that language and with the birds and with the resonance there. That was gonna lead, I'm getting chills here because that was gonna lead to my next question, because I'm a fan of a TV show called Ancient Aliens, and I've done some of my own independent study here, especially since you and I have been getting together. And I have noticed that in ancient times, a lot of these depictions of gods, which we've resolved in our past interviews to mean that they could have been terrestrial beings from somewhere else. My question is it possible that there are different races, like the cats as we perceive cats on Earth is an alien species somewhere else? Dogs, like for instance, the dog god Anubis is pictured a lot. So can you tell me more about that?
Well, the felines or most cat species and acquisitions in this current timeline, one with the Lyrian species, hyperdimensional, is what makes them more smart and intelligent. Certain frequencies are different than others. Same for dog interloses or Syrians, hyperdimensionals that run through their intact fusion stasis. That's why certain encrypted governments use them. Even Area 51 uses these types of acquisitional dog effects to look for certain beings or other paranormal statuses. Why these types of beings? Even dolphins, those run through the Talos Society, Atlantean Society, those type of hyper beings. Mermaids are not what people perceive. They are more alien looking than they are humanoid. They have been perceived to be on the beach before and found. They are different intact beings, and they have run with dolphin species.
Wow. So is it possible that dogs and or cats on Earth can perceive these beings? We've talked about beings coming through different dimensions. So I could be sitting in my room with a cat right now, and a cat may look at something and see something from another dimension in the same room that I can't possibly perceive. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, because there are transmissional nodes up to including avians, certain birds as well, and mammalians of certain acquisitions, reptids of certain acquisitions. Certain types of beings are just run through hypergenetics that ran through the mainframe a long time ago and have pretty much proposed upon their itinerary.
Now, it's curious to me because I'm sure we've talked about evil and evil species and so forth. Are any of these that we just talked about bad? Are they evil, or are they all here for the good of mankind?
Well, the Lyrians, the Syrians, the Avians are all lower codes. Those transmissional fusion beings mostly run through animal statistics, and they're not bad. There are the lower codes. They're not fusion mainly of mankind. They're run on lower encryptions or run through their hyperdimensions on other Terra grids. Now, reptids do run through certain mainframes of humanoid status, which goes in through another topic I may explain on a further itinerary than this one.
Okay, so that brings me to my next point here. We've been seeing a slow disclosure of extraterrestrials and so forth through the government, and I've seen this drip out. The Air Force releasing footage, NASA saying they're taking a serious approach through unidentified flying objects, and it's sort of like a slow drip. And we've established through our past couple interviews that this is on purpose, because if you let it all out at one time, it's going to blow people's minds. We won't be able to handle it. So when that day does come and they take a giant step and feel that we are ready, or there's an exposure of extraterrestrials or beings not from this world, is it possible that could be a false flag event and it could be the evildoers at work here?
Well, it just core depends on what the two itineraries and placement. There are two different cosmic itineraries, one to deal with the right Federation protocols and one to deal with the wrong lead waypoints. It just core depends on what you're to watch for and how to watch for it.
Okay, so if
the mainframe, oh sorry.
I was just going to say, so me as a normal guy who's piqued an interest into this, let's say I see something or I feel like I'm having some sort of an encounter. How do I handle that? Do I guess through communication anyway, do I just think my thoughts and that presence, that being will perceive them?
Well, it just depends on what kind of encounter you portray to. Now, I have many clients who come to me in acquisition saying, well, this type of encounter did not bring me good acquisition codes. Or this type of encounter, I don't know, because they did something to me, but then I felt good from it. Or this type of encounter is, yeah, I felt something great from it, but I don't understand. It does depend from that as well.
Wow. So to be safe, should I always be defensive or should I always be accepting if I see something like this? I know it's hard to tell without knowing more information, but I'm just saying, I'm just thinking for the normal person watching this, and I don't mean normal as in other people aren't normal. What I mean is the average everyday Joe stumbles across a situation. What do they do?
Well, like I said, it depends on the face of the base states of what they're going through. If they're feeling a fear from the acquisitional code and they know it's not something doing good to them, it probably isn't. But if they're feeling it's a flowing or freeway point of effect, then they can allow that and just let their neural spectrum flow through it through better understanding. Okay, why did the being do such to me, but it didn't harm me? Should I respond on a telepathic communication? Maybe, so I can understand what's going on. Now, if it's a bad effect and it really did screw you up and you know there's something on a bad energetic tone wave, you got to learn to block that out. And then you look for a source wave code that be able to eliminate that type of bad energetic recalling code. Could it be a matrix? It could be an acquisitional main bad negative Draco effect, or an artificial encryptancy code of a graphene effect, which decided to take over a neural transplantation of your thought forms, or a bad hyperdimensional effect of a being that could be on certain paranormal statistics. You just got to watch out for those types of lead points.
Now, I've been a believer, just even, especially as I get older, in the fact of a guardian angel or someone looking out for you. I can flash back to certain events and certain times in my life where I was like, how did that happen? How did I make it through that? How did this not happen? Is it possible that we've mistaken what I'm deeming a guardian angel for some sort of extraterrestrial?
Guardian angels and acquisition, like I stated before about Archangel Michael, they're hyperdimensionals of an alien statistic, alien humanoid statistic, being able to change and alternate their form to a higher acquisition. They're a light being, if you will. Guardian angels are the same type of encoding. The real high points of interest are mainframes that would help certain terror realm beings, and proposition needs to be effective for their right calling codes of effect.
So if I do suspect I've had an encounter, and I say suspect because some people might chalk it up to, oh, I'm daydreaming or whatever. What should I tell someone? Should I just journal it? How should I document it? What should I do? I have a feeling if I pick up the phone and call my local police or sheriff's department, they're going to send, the guys in the white coats to come pick me up. And I don't know if I want that to happen.
Well, in layman's perspective, you got to be smart and play smart. If it is something very important, you want to go back to that mainframe and remember it, you put it down on a book. Put it on something important, a computer that no one else can go through. Or if you really want the information out, words you want others to know, you go to a close friend or you go to someone you know close on that paranormal status that may know a better acquisition to help you instead of anyone and everyone, because not everyone's ready for it.
Have you had people approach you, whether it's through social media, whether it's in person or what have you, and say, look, you're a lot more connected to this situation than I am. Does this make sense to you? This happened to me. Have people come to you with an experience?
Yes, many have, many do all the time. I deal with clients regularly. I deal with people when it's dealing with paranormal, dealing with extraterrestrial, dealing with even humans' perspective stuff. I've had people dealing with lower incalling codes. You know, it's not just that. This is a betrayal of the intelligence and the energy that one portrays. It's like a draw in to others. You resonate at a good frequency and you bear certain knowledge statistics, others are going to come to you because they need the acquisition of help. They feel from within their being that can guide them in a proper direction instead of trying to follow another lower energetic calling code. It does run through an electromagnetic frequency tone.
So when other people would approach you or try to approach you, in your, I know it's hard sometimes, but do you ever want to tell somebody, oh my gosh, that's a horrible thing that happened to you, from your interpretation of their experience? So we've established that there's a good and evil force here on Earth. Is it possible that maybe one time somebody came to you with what you perceived from their story to be an evil force? Did you have to give them immediate attention or some sort of help?
Yeah, it's an acquisition because I'm advanced at astral projection and perception of what I know. It doesn't have to be just physically online. And then telling if they're going through a bad calling code, whether it's energetically healing or whether it's through their wave tone or where their residence is, someone's getting manipulated through a bad energy frame or some other paranormal status, I get right on it. It's the in-tune calling code of advanced perception of a astral projection emulation node.
Now, it seems to me that that's a very heartwarming and kind felt reaction, but I'm worried, is there not, let's say I run into somebody else and I'm talking to them and they have similar reflection as you do and similar stories as you do and similar truths that you have. But is it possible that that same person can be in a mask or disguising their true intent? That's what I'm getting at. I know it's hard, even as humans on Earth, sometimes we have people that try to take advantage of other people. I'm guessing the same thing happens with extraterrestrials as well. They try to act benevolent, they try to act nice, but they're really here for this or that.
And yep, and that goes especially for certain Archonan species, Archon Draco species. There are two different types of Archons. There's a good and a bad. But regardless of the astral fit, you should know from one's energy, and you should know from the way they intone towards you, whether they're in the mask or not. You would feel that persecution cause wave effect, and you would just know. And regardless, yes, watch out for wolves in sheep's clothing. But another thing, humankind has to maintain their more common ethical sense and know between right and wrong.
So that goes back to being a kid or even growing through life, even now, going with your gut or that little voice in your head or that feeling you get, whether something's too good to be true or whether something's good or bad for you.
Same persecution. I mean, it goes to the type of innocence that kids betray. Children here in this matrix, they run through and they grow up with innocence, but by innovation nodes of a bad neural wavelengths, they end up being reversed from the effect. It just all goes in a better curriculum needs to stand for this matrix.
So we had talked before about cats and dogs and birds being able to react and see things that we may not be able to from interdimensional beings or what have you. Is the same thing happen with the innocence of children, like you had mentioned? Can they perceive things? I ask because in my personal life, I know of several people as children that had imaginary friends. and some of them were at different levels, like storytelling and all this other stuff back and forth. So is that the innocence of children? Can they perceive these interdimensional beings, these outworldly things?
Yes, because their central biopsis waves are a growth statistic. They're learning through their central biopsis waves, and because of that, through that source mainframe that they run through in the neural grids, they have a higher generics to being able to maintain things easier than adults. Plus, through their growth stasis, they're more healthier. Now, all can be placed right for adults and children. It's just a thing can be on a better growth statistic. That means adults over time, they run through bad, they're putting in wrong things upon their mainframe and then learning it wrong. Kids, they're growing. It's a different wavelength, so they're able to elapse better. But once they hit the adulthood, honestly and unfortunately through this timeline, they'll end up losing certain statistics. Not all, but there are certain acquisitions that do.
Now,
we don't want that.
Is there such thing as a total blackout encounter? In other words, I'm not going to give too much up, but I know of somebody who had a situation where they were at one place at one time. Then all of a sudden, without explanation, they were 20 minutes or so from where they were supposed to be at that time. It was like a total blackout situation. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing was in their system, supposedly. I mean, I don't know. This is what they're telling me. Yet their last memory was at point A, and somehow they wound up at point B, and they lost track of a lot of time as well. Does that sound like an encounter that they may have had with an interdimensional or out of this world being?
Well, of course, it depends. It could be an in-muted stasis of a hyper wavelength through their hologram focal wave nodes that they are going through. That means they could be jumping in between their molecular stasis and not being able to remember that rectification code. And it could have bounced them in an on-between hyperportalized wavelength. Or, like you said, it could run through hyperdimensionals where they're pretty much transmission of their holographical nodes from one equation to the other within seconds, which can happen because as a interior fusion stasis, my being intact and others as well can, through hyper advanced astral projection, move through hypermolecules into a wavelength. But it just core depends because the transmissions had to be deducted and interlocked for that neural node to go into effect.
We spoke briefly before about space shifters or beings that have the ability to change their appearance. Is that something that's common across all these races we're talking about? Or is there only certain species or certain races that can do this?
Well, it's called an altered shift dimensional wave phase. I myself, like Pleiades, Nordics, there are also others. It deals with the fusion statistic of a hyperdimensional. A lot of them, you'll notice from the eyes. It runs through their mainframe. Slits run through erupted species. Most erupted get that, the humanoid statistics. That can alternate on its mainframe. Eye generics, graphical generics, and it also runs through those that do have a hyperdimensional wave phase through circuitry codes. Like this one, like we are talking, you'll notice an alternation in the actual electromagnetic grid itself, which would make something look more uncommon than it should be.
So with that in mind, there obviously the shift to shift like that, they must be to their advantage and to our disadvantage. That must be why they're wanting to make that change. Is there a way, if I suspect something or someone, like my gut, like we talked about, my conscience, or I notice something that just doesn't appear quite right, especially with the eyes, just trust my conscience, trust my gut in that? I mean, I'm not trying to avoid certain people or certain situations, but at the same time, I'm always one for truth. The truth will set you free. If I know the truth about you and I don't care to interact with you, that's fine. Or you don't care to interact with me, that's fine. I'm good. Just as long as we all know truth. I don't think we should have to put on a face or shape shift ourselves as humans with a fake face. So if I have that gut, it's probably more than right. Is that what we're saying here?
So being able to notice the differentiality between right and wrong on that spectrum and be able to play a better protection on your mainframe is an essential base status. Not all higher generics are good. Not all higher generics are bad. But you yourself can place your itinerary better once you know the difference between the good and the bad.
Now, what about family? How does family come into play with this? Because a situation like yourself, if I recall, your whole family isn't on the same wavelength as you. They're not fusion statistics. So what about family? How does that happen? And whether it's personal, your personal interaction or not, but how does family play a role in these fusion statistics? How does that, good and bad?
I'm a little bit different. I run on my own acquisitional point of effect alone. So regardless, but of others that I know that are fusion, that have generics of a cosmic wavelength, they have families of currencies, they just deal with it. They learn to blend in. I blend in a different way. So they learn to blend in through their acquisitional codes and maintain their adequacy while they learn their growth wavelengths to help in this planet.
Now, a lot of people that may be watching this are thinking, oh, come on, this isn't real. You know, and we've talked about it before, and there's going to be some people you just can't reach. You know, I can try, I can lead you to water, but I can't make you drink. If someone's watching this right now and they're doubting everything we're saying, not that we have to win that person over, but is there anything we can say or do to win that person over?
Well, when it comes to the Federation and when it comes to the QH, it's not just my own acquisitional point of effect. Who's the one that made Space Force in the first place? There is a reason why he did such, Trump. It wasn't never a bad thing. Now, certain effects come into portrayal now currently that will help for this certain acquisition in the future now. Things happen for a reason, and if you want to just go on my mainframe and say, okay, well, we don't believe you. Now go, who did the good parts? No, don't go pointing fingers and say, well, it's all bad he did. Look further into the Space Force and look further into the QH. Look further into technologies for quantum, look further into Tesla, look further into all of that. And you'll find out that there was a deeper picture and a deeper purpose for all of this. And that's all I can say on that, because further acquisition cannot go into this point of time.
Yeah, there comes a time where you feel like you're trying to hard sell somebody the truth and they don't want to hear it. Then you yourself are almost like, wow, now I seem like I'm pushing something that I shouldn't be pushing. So I get it. Some people just don't get it, or some people just refuse to get it, or what have you. So God bless them. It is what it is. We talked before about ancient times where Earthlings may have assumed that people that may have been visitors from out of this world or interdimensional, they may have confused those people with gods. We talked about the correlation between religion and extraterrestrials. Is there an evil force that shapeshifted or hidden as a god? So they come in and they're like, hey, we're a god. And is that still going on today?
Well, if you want to deal with an Antichrist form or an anti-acquisitional code, there is a certain leader and effect on this curriculum that is causing bad leeway in conjunction. Among other attributes of effect, their pinpointed accuracy form can be hyper-emulated to something better, because they did run through an ancient of old, but their ancient of old secrecy forms must re-allot their fortification processing speeds better. Currently, they forgot their standards of effect, and they should have learned better from that from the beginning.
So I think it's important what you said a few minutes ago about kind of doing your own research and coming to these realizations by asking these questions in your mind, yet getting answers to these questions. It's one thing to be driving down the road and go, hey, I wonder if they're really extraterrestrial beings. That's sitting in front of your computer or talking with people, reaching out to people who may or may not have had experiences, the good and the bad. You always want to weigh out the positives and the negatives. That's what bothers me. In our recent thing here, I heard them say, Trust the science. Don't question the science. That's what science is. Science is questioning. Science is asking why. Science is asking how. Science is asking what will. So with that being stated, is it correct that the interdimensional or out of this world beings want us to advance in technology, or is technology a force brought to us by the evil side?
There are two different types of technology. There's the artificial frequency codes, and then there's the advancement codes. The advancement codes through force, or that of a quantum frequency, or of good acquisition. It depends on the types of technology being brought out and how they can portray. We have to make sure that they are maintained by the right fortification processing speeds, not the wrong acquisitional codes. Otherwise, it could cause a whole unequilibrium upon this platform. This platform has been effective through good acquisitional code timelines, through ancient symmetry lines, dealing with the ancient pyramids, or dealing with the trilateral effects in Antarctica, or dealing with the ancient artifact symmetry codes of Atlantis, the Talos Society, all of them. Some of those effective recalling codes are still into a good effect, but there are certain other acquisitions that are not. This planet needs to be cleansed of the bad betrayals here. And in order for that to happen, humankind must know the difference and start waking up with their calling codes. Wake up the processing speed that they were once brought here for.
All right. Now, let's say I'm a true believer. This is happening. Do I just keep myself open to new things that might be developing in regards to evil forces, good forces, interdimensional and out of this world beings? Do I just continue to have an open mind, or is it my responsibility as a member of the human race to share this gift I found?
You can maintain on both, but it depends on the second acquisition of effect, the secrecy node. You have to play it careful on how you pull that out into effect. When you play it smart, you play it carefully, and you know where to go from there, I guarantee in the long run it will help the human race. But if you don't play it careful, and then it goes in the wrong direction, the ones on the wrong encoding wavelengths could bounce that back, and it will not good on good curriculum.
Wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity to get together again, Blue. Let everybody know how they could reach out to you, how they could, get more direct information from you.
All right. I'm also on Twitter. I am on Facebook, Blue Crystalline Phoenix. You can look through Twitter through there. Also, I'm on Instagram as well. But the best thing for him to get to acquisitional effect is either through Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Blue. I look forward to speaking with you again soon, okay?
Thank you as well, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.